The Hidden Realities of Nursing Home Life, a candid and comprehensive reflection from an 82-year-old resident. As I sit here in my modest, shared room at the nursing home, watching the afternoon sunlight filter through the half-closed blinds, casting elongated shadows across the linoleum floor, I find myself immersed in deep reflection about the life-altering decision that brought me to this place. At 82 years young, having navigated nearly a century of life's triumphs and tribulations, I've accumulated wisdom that only 8 decades of lived experience can provide. Yet among all my life choices, one stands out with particular poignancy as my greatest regret: the well-intentioned but ultimately misguided decision to move into this nursing home facility. What was presented to me by caring family members and medical professionals as the safest, most supportive option has instead become something akin to a gilded cage, superficially comfortable but fundamentally restrictive, slowly but inexorably eroding the very essence of who I am as an autonomous human being. I share my story not to instill fear or discourage those who genuinely require this level of care, but rather to illuminate the complex realities that glossy brochures don't depict, and that even the most well-meaning families often fail to anticipate when making these difficult decisions for their elderly loved ones. The stark contrast between promised care and institutional reality. When my family first broached the subject of moving into a nursing home, their arguments sounded eminently reasonable and were delivered with the purest of intentions. "You'll have round-the-clock professional care at your fingertips," my daughter assured me, her voice brimming with both concern and confidence. "No more worrying about preparing meals or keeping up with household cleaning," my son-in-law added, framing it as liberation from domestic burdens. The full-color brochures they showed me depicted vibrant, smiling seniors engaged in crafts, walking arm in arm through sunny gardens, and participating in group activities, images that suggested community, engagement, and joyful golden years. None of this idealistic presentation prepared me for the profound loss of personal autonomy that began almost the moment I crossed the threshold of this facility, an erosion of independence so gradual yet so comprehensive that I scarcely noticed its progression until it was substantially advanced. The first jarring realization came with the inescapable regimentation of daily life. In my own home, my days had followed a natural, organic rhythm that reflected my personal preferences and lifelong habits. Waking naturally with the morning light, puttering contentedly in my kitchen, while preparing tea exactly when and how I liked it, deciding spontaneously on a whim to sit in my beloved garden when the weather was particularly fine. Here, life operates according to an inflexible institutional timetable designed for operational efficiency rather than personal fulfillment. Breakfast arrives promptly at 7:30 a.m., whether my body feels ready for food or not. Medications are dispensed according to the facility's medication administration schedule, with little regard for whether it aligns with my body's natural rhythms or needs. Even basic bodily functions like bathroom visits frequently require careful planning around staff availability, transforming what should be simple acts of personal autonomy into logistical challenges. The cumulative psychological effect of these countless small surrenders of control is a subtle but persistent erosion of personal agency that chips away, day after day, at one's fundamental sense of self and dignity. The heartbreaking erosion of family connections and social identity. Perhaps the most profoundly painful realization has been witnessing my gradual transformation from family matriarch to institutional resident in the eyes of my loved ones. In the beginning, during those first hopeful weeks, visits were frequent and filled with good intentions. My daughter would stop by after work with little treats. My grandchildren would visit on weekends bursting with stories about their youthful adventures. But as the months accumulated, as life outside these walls continued its relentless forward march, my existence became increasingly confined to this limited physical and emotional space. Visits grew further apart, their duration shorter. Phone calls increasingly replaced in-person connections, and I found myself transitioning from an active participant in family life to more of a footnote in my family's ongoing narrative, someone to be checked on rather than someone to engage with. I understand intellectually the pressures and demands of their busy lives, burgeoning careers, growing children, myriad responsibilities that pull them in countless directions. But this intellectual understanding does little to ease the visceral pain of sitting by the window in the common area, watching other residents receive visitors while my own phone remains stubbornly silent. There's an unspoken but profound shift that occurs when an elder moves into institutional care. You transition in your family's consciousness from being the vibrant center of holiday gatherings, the keeper of family traditions, the host of Sunday dinners, to becoming someone who needs to be checked on, a responsibility rather than a relationship. The emotional toll of this quiet redefinition of your role within the family structure is something no pamphlet, no well-meaning doctor, no concerned social worker ever adequately warned me about during the decision-making process. The paradox of care, how institutional support can accelerate decline. Medical professionals consistently emphasize the critical importance of maintaining physical and cognitive activity throughout the aging process, yet nursing homes, despite their best intentions, and often through no particular fault of their own, frequently create environments that inadvertently foster dependence rather than independence. I entered this facility as a relatively capable octogenarian, able to walk unassisted, albeit slowly, prepare simple meals for myself, and manage nearly all aspects of my personal care with minimal support. After just 6 months under the facility's care, I found myself needing assistance for tasks I'd previously handled without a second thought, my capabilities atrophying from disuse rather than from any progression of underlying conditions. This phenomenon is both insidious and largely invisible in its daily operation. When someone else does your laundry, you naturally stop moving as much throughout the day. When all meals are prepared for you and delivered on a schedule, you lose not just the physical activity of cooking, but also the cognitive stimulation of meal planning, recipe selection, and the creative problem-solving that home cooking requires. When staff members are perpetually overworked and under pressure, it becomes easier to acquiesce to using a wheelchair than to patiently wait for walking assistance, setting in motion a cycle of decreasing mobility. I've watched this tragic progression unfold not just in myself, but in numerous fellow residents, capable individuals experiencing a gradual surrender of physical and cognitive abilities not due to illness or inevitable aging, but simply from the structural disuse that institutional living encourage the loss of privacy and personal dignity in shared spaces. At 82 years old, having lived through wars, raised children, and managed a household for decades, I never imagined I would find myself yearning for something as fundamentally simple as an uninterrupted moment of true privacy. In this environment, privacy becomes an extraordinary luxury rather than a basic right. Health aides, however well-intentioned and professionally trained, enter without consistent knocking, their hands full with medications or cleaning supplies. Personal care activities that were once private rituals become semi-public events, with staff members discussing your hygiene needs in front of others during shift changes. Your most basic bodily functions become topics for clinical discussion at the nurse's station, your bathroom habits charted on whiteboards for all staff to see. The constant exposure, the lack of personal space, the inevitable surrender of modesty that comes with needing assistance for intimate tasks. All of these take a psychological toll that's difficult to articulate to those who haven't experienced it, but that profoundly affects one's sense of self-worth and dignity on a daily basis. The invisible bars of institutionalization, when the facility becomes your entire world. What has shocked me most in retrospect is how quickly and completely the nursing home environment becomes your entire universe. The outside world, with all its beautiful unpredictability, its vibrant chaos, its rich tapestry of sights, sounds, and experiences, gradually begins to feel distant, abstract, even intimidating. Your daily routines form around institutional schedules rather than personal preferences. Your social interactions become largely limited to staff members and other residents, rather than the diverse mix of ages and relationships that characterize life in the broader community. Your previous existence, with all its complexity, spontaneity, and self-direction, slowly shrinks to fit the physical and psychological dimensions of your room and the facility's common areas. The cruelest irony of all? By the time many residents fully realize they want to leave, they've often become too physically debilitated, psychologically conditioned, or financially constrained to make that choice a viable option. The institution becomes not just your home, but your entire world, with all the limitations that implies. Alternative paths worth considering before choosing institutional care. Had I possessed then the knowledge and insight I've gained through lived experience, I would have explored every possible alternative to nursing home placement with the determination of a woman fighting for her very life. In-home care services that could have provided support while allowing me to maintain my independence in familiar surroundings. Senior living communities offering private apartments with available assistance as needed. Even the complex but potentially rewarding option of moving in with family, despite the inevitable interpersonal challenges, might have preserved more of my autonomy and dignity. The fundamental realization I've come to through painful experience: nursing home care should be viewed as an absolute last resort when all other options have been thoroughly exhausted, not as a default solution for the predictable challenges of aging. A message to families considering this step for their loved ones, to the adult children and concerned family members who may be reading this while grappling with these difficult decisions for their aging parents or relatives. I know with absolute certainty that your intentions spring from genuine love and concern. You worry about preventable falls, about missed medications, about the very real dangers of isolation. But I implore you to carefully consider whether nursing home placement truly serves your loved one's best interests or primarily functions to ease your own concerns and logistical challenges. The price of safety and convenience may be paid in the currency of your parents' sense of self, their dignity, their very identity. Before making this life-altering and often irreversible decision, please exhaust all other possible alternatives. Modify homes for accessibility with ramps and grab bars. Hire part-time caregivers to assist with specific needs. Explore community-based programs like adult day services. The additional effort and expense these options require could mean preserving your loved one's fundamental dignity and quality of life in ways that institutional care simply cannot. To my fellow seniors, contemplating or resisting, this transition, for those of you in your later years who may be contemplating this transition, whether voluntarily or under family pressure, please know that you have more power in this decision than you may realize. Your voice matters. Your preferences are valid. Insist on trial periods rather than permanent commitments. Explore every possible alternative arrangement before relinquishing your independence. Most crucially, understand that entering a nursing home is rarely the temporary transition it's often framed as being. For most, it becomes their new and permanent normal. Fight to maintain your independence for as long as humanly possible, because the activities of daily living, cooking your own meals, cleaning your own space, even occasionally struggling with tasks, aren't mere burdens, but essential acts of self-preservation that maintain your capabilities and sense of self. Final reflections and hard-won wisdom from the other side. As I enter my third year in this nursing home, my primary regret isn't about aging itself. Growing old is, after all, a privilege denied to many. My profound regret lies in having surrendered too readily to society's pervasive narrative that elders belong in care facilities rather than being supported in maintaining their autonomy within their own communities for as long as possible. The lesson I've learned too late? That institutional care, even when administered with the best of intentions by kind and professional staff, cannot replicate or replace the life-giving power of personal autonomy, meaningful purpose, and authentic human connection. My hope in sharing these hard-won insights is that others approaching similar crossroads might make more informed choices about their golden years. Choices that preserve not just physical safety, but the essential qualities that make life worth living at any age. For those who do require nursing home care, may my story help you enter with eyes wide open, better prepared to advocate for your needs and maintain whatever aspects of autonomy and dignity the system will allow. And for those with alternatives, may it give you the courage to explore them fully before surrendering the irreplaceable freedoms of independent living. The Hidden Costs of Institutional Care, a Candid Examination from Within. What begins as a well-intentioned solution for safety and care often transforms into something far more complex and compromising. The transition to nursing home life represents not just a change of address, but a fundamental restructuring of one's entire existence. Medical professionals consistently emphasize the critical importance of maintaining physical and cognitive activity in our later years, yet the very structure of institutional living often works against this essential prescription for healthy aging. When I first crossed the threshold of this facility, I could walk confidently without assistance, prepare my own simple meals, and manage all aspects of my personal care. Within just 6 months, I found myself increasingly dependent on staff for tasks I had performed independently my entire adult life. Not because of any dramatic health decline, but because the system itself quietly reshapes residents into dependents. This gradual erosion of capability occurs through countless small accommodations that seem insignificant in isolation, but accumulate into profound change. When someone else assumes responsibility for your laundry, you naturally move less throughout the week. When meals appear at your table perfectly prepared and precisely timed, You lose not just the physical activity of cooking, but the mental engagement of meal planning, recipe selection, and the creative problem solving that comes with managing a kitchen. When overworked staff members, through no fault of their own, can't always be available for walking assistance, the wheelchair becomes the path of least resistance, initiating a cycle of decreasing mobility that's difficult to reverse. I've witnessed this same tragic progression in fellow residents time and again, capable individuals surrendering their independence not to illness or inevitable decline, but to the quiet tyranny of institutional convenience and the well-meaning but ultimately destructive impulse to do for seniors what they could still do for themselves. The psychological toll of this loss of privacy and personal dignity cuts even deeper than the physical compromises. At 82 years old, having lived through decades of personal and historical challenges, I never anticipated that I would come to cherish something as basic as an uninterrupted private moment. Yet in this environment, privacy becomes an extraordinary luxury rather than a fundamental right. Health aides, uniformly kind and professional, enter without consistent warning, their hands full with medications or cleaning supplies. The most intimate aspects of personal care become group activities, discussed openly during shift changes. Your bodily functions transform from private realities to charted data points, your bathroom habits noted on whiteboards for all staff to monitor. This constant exposure, this surrender of modesty and personal space, creates a psychological burden that's difficult to articulate to those who haven't experienced it, but that fundamentally alters one's sense of self-worth and dignity. Perhaps most insidious is how completely and quickly the nursing home becomes one's entire universe. The vibrant, unpredictable world outside, with its spontaneous interactions, its rich sensory experiences, its beautiful chaos, gradually fades into abstraction, replaced by the sterile predictability of institutional routines. Your days organize around facility schedules rather than personal rhythms. Your social world contracts to staff members and fellow residents, losing the intergenerational richness of community life. Your identity subtly shifts from unique individual to resident. Your previous existence with all its complexity and self-direction slowly compressed to fit the narrow dimensions of your room and the facility's common areas. The cruelest irony emerges when residents realize they want to leave. Often by then they've become too physically compromised, psychologically conditioned, or financially constrained to make that choice viable. The institution becomes not just where you live, but the boundaries of your entire existence. Had I understood these realities earlier, I would have fought harder to explore alternatives that maintain independence while providing necessary support. In-home care services that assist with specific needs while preserving autonomy in familiar surroundings. Senior living communities offering private apartments with available assistance. Even the complicated but potentially rewarding option of multi-generational living, despite its challenges, might have preserved more of my dignity and agency. The essential truth I've learned through painful experience: nursing home care should represent the last resort after all other options have been thoroughly exhausted, not the default solution for the normal challenges of aging. To families considering this path for their loved ones, I offer this perspective: your concerns come from love, but please examine whether nursing home placement truly serves your elders' best interests or primarily addresses your own legitimate but potentially misplaced anxieties about safety and convenience. The cost of protection may be paid in the currency of your parents' sense of self, Before making this often irreversible decision, exhaust every alternative: home modifications, part-time caregivers, community support programs. The additional effort may preserve your loved one's fundamental dignity in ways institutional care simply cannot. To my fellow seniors, you possess more agency in this decision than society often acknowledges. Insist on exploring all options. Demand trial periods before permanent commitments. Most crucially, understand that nursing home placement is rarely the temporary measure it's sometimes presented as being. Fight to maintain your independence, because the daily activities we often view as burdens, cooking, cleaning, even occasionally struggling with tasks, are in fact essential exercises that maintain our capabilities and sense of purpose. As I reflect on my years in the nursing home, my primary regret isn't about aging itself. Growing old remains a privilege. My sorrow stems from accepting society's narrative that elders naturally belong in care facilities rather than being supported in maintaining autonomy within their communities. The painful lesson learned too late: institutional care, even at its best, cannot replicate the life-sustaining power of personal agency, meaningful engagement, and authentic human connection. My hope in sharing these hard-earned insights is that others might approach these decisions with eyes wide open, making choices that preserve not just physical safety, but the essential qualities that make life worth living at any age. Thank you so much for watching. We truly appreciate you being here. If this video resonated with you, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What was your biggest takeaway? How do you plan to apply it in your life? Your insights not only inspire others in our community, but also help us create more meaningful content for you. If you found value here, please consider liking this video, subscribing to our channel, and sharing it with someone who might benefit. It makes a bigger difference than you know. We're grateful for your support and can't wait to continue this journey with you in future videos. Until next time, keep growing and stay open to new possibilities.